Hi, Carla.
Hello.
Welcome to the Expert Talk.
Thank you. Thank you, Raj. It's so good to see you. I'm always glad to see you. It's always a happy day for me when I get to have a chance to see you.
Oh, my
Well,
pleasure. Thank you so much.
thank you. I'd like to start out by introducing you to our wonderful audience. And I'd like to say something about all of your wonderful experience and and the years that you've dedicated to education. So the first thing I'd like to say um, is that I'm very grateful to work with you because it's always nice to find someone who's equally passionate about education and child development and helping parents do the best that they can for their children. I know that you have at least 17 years of experience in the educational field. And on top of that, overlapping, you have 15 years of leadership as a principal and all the experiences that go with that. And um, I picked out some of my favorite uh, tips and clues about you, and I know that the long line of extension would take us the whole time that we could be here talking together. But you have a lot of global educational technical experience as a strategist. So that actually moves into the whole idea of spreading out in a flexible way of being excellent in business or in business excellence itself for project planning. And that also intertwines with your ability to do course development, with your expertise in education and in dealing with parents. And I love this type of integrated development and strategist working that goes with all of the aspects of taking care of what children's needs are, and most importantly, and your signature sense is having a unique blend to in the industry for academia excellence and taking all of these experiences and tying them together. And that's one of my favorite traits that I see in other people, where they have these various skills and then they can integrate them together. Because as a teacher, we need to we need to be conscious or aware, or we need to be intuitively inclined, as I like to say, to be able to respond to our own unique intuitive abilities in order to really recognize the intuitive cognitive abilities of children. And I think we both have that in place. It sounds like I'm bragging about both of us, but I have to say that
Wow.
because it is an important trait for teachers to have. And if teachers have that, then we have to consider ourselves blessed in many ways. And um, my favorite of all of your abilities is that you are a sought after speaker, a keynote speaker. You've done a lot of conferences, you've been to a lot of universities. I mean, just in these past weeks, you've been to colleges and universities, and they've received you very well. And you've also delivered um, many programs that deal directly with pedagogy and academia excellence and readiness for children. And you have a pile of certifications. And of course, you are now embarking on fulfilling your PhD. So all of those things are very impressive together. I'm very impressed because
Thank you
I've
so
gone
much, Carla.
30
Yeah,
years
my
looking
pleasure.
at teachers and seeing people who really do belong in the field and others who I've wondered why they went into the field. So I'm very glad. I'm extremely happy to collaborate with you.
Thank you
So,
so much,
but
Carla, for such a wonderful. Yes, yes, please.
I'd like to start out by asking you my first question of the day.
Before that,
And
Carla, audience should also know you because
oh, they
you
should.
carry loads and loads of experience, and loads of not only the
Yes.
education experience, but of course your passion, skills experience. And we are talking about cognitive skill. It's very important people to know that we are of two different age, like we are two different poles, but we clicked so well, the kind of energy we carry, the kind of thought process and the work we have done in education system. I think we were destined to meet, and it's been like a couple of months. We have been exchanging a lot of thoughts and ideas, and we have come to this platform where we can bring global education thought process, especially the cognitive part. So, would like to share the audience that Carla is the vice president for Educare Foundation School in Nigeria. She has done her PhD from University of Sri Lanka, and she's a rich with an experience of 25 years in cognitive language development, which is the basis of education, overall basis of the education, her early childhood education, and also she is with teaching of ESL. And something extraordinary about Carla is that she was a part of the rock band. She does ice skating, swimming. She watched a lot of documentary. I think these are very important skills to develop during your lifetime, because you learn a lot by doing multi passionate sides of your life. Her vision of life is to know your brain to the best, because brain is something which helps you to guide your life into the right direction, which makes you intuitive also. So that's lovely to know, Carla, about your rich experience and the kind of work you have done. And being a born teacher and reaching to this level itself shows a journey of a teacher and educator, which can be very impressive and can be a role model for many educators when we come across them or they come across us. So now over to you, Carla.
Okay, well, I'd like to start out by asking you a question.
Okay.
Yes. Uh, I think that one of the most significant and sensitive things that we are dealing with today, anywhere in the world, is that students are very overloaded with work and homework assignments and
Right.
studying and trying to be as excellent as they can. And um, on top of that, they get a lot of pressure from parents because parents want their children to do well. It's understandable. So, is this model, this overloading of study and work and homework, is this actually beneficial for students or is this detrimental? Because we need to know how that also integrates with some other elements that we are also very concerned with, which is emotional and mental health. And one of the basis for both of our work is understanding the emotional cognitive development part of learning for a lifetime and how that has a bearing on students throughout the school years and then for the rest of their life.
So,
Whatever it is
Carla,
that you'd
this
love
is
to
very,
say about
yes,
this.
this is very interesting question and not a more secret. Whether it is national to in every nation across the world, it is always considered that homework has become, assignment is overloaded. There was a time when the homeworks were not given. There was thumb rule at the school that homework has to be within the school and child has to just do the recapitulation, something at home and activities. But online picture now coming in, day-to-day life in the education system. I think all the projects work, all kind of written work, everything is done on the other side at home. So I think we have now actually burdened the students with lot of work, whether it is classwork or homework, which is really creating a frustration level, a
Yes.
negative situation for them, which is at times overwhelming also. With the due course, I've seen that the retention capacity in the child has gone down, and the performance has also gone down. The grades have gone down.
Yes.
The procrastination level has gone high. The illusionary factor of just being on the social media and thinking about something extra has gone very higher. So the stress has gone high, not only for the child but also for the parent, because the involvement of the parent has gone very high to make the
Yes.
child work on something.
Yes. That's
So,
indeed.
so dealing with this is very important. But yes, so there are certain tips I would like to give, which may be a very quick tips for parents also,
Okay.
and for the children also, especially the children of higher middle school, higher secondary. I think they can do themselves by themselves. First is to stick to a schedule. You chalk out your activities, what you want to do on a daily basis. You form it a day before. Practice a good time management in terms of, remove distraction of when you're doing those activities. A
Yes.
second point I would say. Third, I would say that start early. Like what you want to do in the morning, what you want to do in the midday, what you want to do in the evening, what you want to close at the night. These are very important to be prioritized based on that. If it is too overwhelming for a child, I mean, he is not able to take, at the end, we are life, we have to be at peace. I would say, suggest that just leave it, walk away from that activity or from the work for time being. We are in the learning process. There is no hard and fast rule, which students are taking education as a hard and fast rule. Even the parents are doing that. We have to make them understand. Stay organized is very important. And I would say that make the time for a relaxation. You need to have your me time. You need to have a meditation time. You need to do something which recharges you. Either you sleep or you do some, just in silence, do something which you love to do alone. That is something, a relaxation time. I think these are some of the tips and trick for the kids and the parents. As far as the tips to the educators are concerned, since we're into the online system, I think the educators should bring something on online work which can be done on spot when they're teaching with certain tools, projects which are online, not an offline, because that overloads it onto the students. So that's how we can sense the classroom management activity online and offline, reducing the stress of the students.
That's very important, and I'm glad you highlighted those particular points, especially in terms of creating a structure for students, because then they find some security in that. So my next question to you would be, well, do you want to ask me a question first, or shall I ask you another question? I can ask you another question,
No,
right?
you asked because I feel like a kid answering this side, and I love that kind
Okay.
of role play.
Okay.
So being
So
an
I have another
educator, but
question
I'm
for you.
always yes, yes, please, yes.
Okay, this is one of my favorite questions. I'm unsure exactly why. Maybe it's because I love India, but I do have the question of asking how India is going to be positioned in the future, because I am certain, and I think everybody can probably testify equally, that it's a leading nation in the pursuit of the STEM fields. We see so many people coming out of India who are showing excellence in any of the STEM fields. Science, technology, engineering, maths, medical, and we want, and also there's a lot of people going into business executive positions coming out of India. We see that a lot. There's CEOs in America that are from India. And so how do you see this with 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 the pressure of education and overloading of homework? On top of that, we now see the STEM fields being very revered in India. How do you see this affecting education in general? How do you see it affecting the
In general, if you
standardization?
see today, it is innovation economy. It is no more a knowledge economy. Knowledge is available on Google across the world, and it is more application-based education, having the experience of, real-time experience is required. Now, we are facing unprecedented challenges from socio-economical and also environmental factors, where technological development has overtaken the entire education system. Now, with this development, there are challenges, but there are opportunities also uh, for the human development. Now, future is very uncertain. We cannot say what is going to change, what is going to come again, but we need to open up and work for it and open the doors. Now today it is, when we do a lot of projects, when we talk about innovations, kids are doing the projects, they're automating it, they're doing the patent right, they're creating the prototypes. So it is more on a project based learning. With the project there is a progress going parallelly. So we are actually shaping the new generation or the millennials in terms of their creativity, in terms of their resilience, in terms of the intelligence. Also along with the subject, we are also creating them a value based human being. Now if you see, talk about India, India is again bringing the old education system back, and I'm happy that it's coming with the new education policy. Now which is aiming not only to the knowledge, but it also is aiming to the skills, attitudes, values, what student need, how the student need to thrive and shape up their world is very, very important. Now for educators, what is there is something which India is looking forward is to, as you rightly pointed out, the pedagogy. And I now know why your Indian uh, bent is coming, because you shared me other day on a casual talk about Kala having 5% of her genes as a Indian Punjabi. I was very excited that I could connect from those, I think those 5%. And then now the degree is in the exponential graph. So how can an instructional system be developed in the education system pertaining to pedagogy, assessment, and value system is something we look for the transitional framework, which is now India is working upon. And I think by 20, which is proposed is 2025, I think by then we will be in a right form of having a lovely pedagogy, a right approach of holistic pedagogy, bringing all these elements into the design of the instruction. So that way I could say that we see that the curriculum in Indian standardization is moving towards a very promising form.
That's good to know, because I know that here in America, you often hear people bantering back and forth about which education system is better, the Finnish education system or the Chinese education system. I
Carla,
personally
this is
vote.
something very interesting when you talk about which education system is better, because we
Yeah,
are fighting, we are here in a fight of which education system is better. But point is, how do kids learn best is the question, because they are the
exactly.
learners, they are the end users, whether it
Right.
is an online class of the books or the projects, whether it is an online product usage we talk about in edtech also.
Mhm.
So just wanted to know, how do kids learn best, and what is the best way that new information is taken up by a child, processed by a child, stored and retrieved by a child? If one understands the mental process of learning and put to use, according to you, what can make learning more understandable? I'm not saying retaining,
Right.
understandable is something. So your thoughts.
Exactly. Yeah, very good question. And one of the questions I like to answer the most, because there's a lot of misconceptions about the way learning really works. And it's it's really outside of the mainstream. You often hear adults talking about emotional intelligence and applying it in the workplace and in their social development skills. And uh, it's I'm really happy to hear people having these conversations and that it's in the mainstream. But the real problem is that emotional intelligence development, as people understand it in pop term concepts and in the mainstream, it's very disassociated from its roots. It's very disassociated from emotional cognition itself. And then there's a lot of disassociations between things. So education is done with one type of system in mind, and then emotional intelligence is done with a completely different type of system in mind. And when you talk about things like brain development and child development and educational development and social development and human progress, actually, there's one definition for all of these things, and you could reduce it to emotional cognitive development. So when we speak about it in the topic that we are addressing today, which is education, the typical traditional
I think
conventional
this is a
model.
very important, very, yeah, very important. Sorry to interrupt. You have raised a very important part of the cognitive skill, which is emotions, and somewhere the
Exactly.
society as a whole on that.
Which is exactly what my answer is to the whole question, and I know that you and I both understand it. But the typical model of drill for skill really uh, entails focusing on what we would call our IQ, our intellectual knowledge development. But all intellectual knowledge development is based on emotional cognitive knowledge development. So when we speak of having memories or retaining knowledge and information so it can be reapplied to what we know, we really have to consider what emotional cognitive knowledge really is. And the
So,
roots of emotion.
yes, yes, ma'am. So, Carla,
Yes.
like, we are talking about kids. We were also kids once upon a time, and we have also crossed all those journeys. So, what do you recall about how do we learn from the previous course work and experiences? The cognitive school of thoughts focus on information processing, stimuli, and memory. How does cognitive skill help in short-term memory and long-term memory building and retention? I believe with my experience, it varies from person to person. My short-term memory is also, I've seen, strong. Even my long-term memory is strong. I remember the things which I've learned in class 1, 2, or in my, at the age of 6 and 7 also.
Mhm.
I remember the experiences I have, and there were trial and error, hit and error method of learning, where I learned many things by myself. And I think that is one of the best way of learning by self. So how does cognitive skill helps in short-term memory and long-term memory building and retentions according to you?
Well, again, I think that one of the best ways to answer this question is that I recently heard a neuroscientist say we tend to follow this belief that we are thinking machines that feel, but actually that is completely untrue. We are feeling machines that think. So again, the the roots and mechanics and anatomy for both long-term and short-term memory and retention and skills are still altogether rooted and synthesized in emotional cognitive development. So we really need to consider how emotional cognitive development is really structured. Excuse me. And also, we need to understand all of the things that are tied together with emotional cognitive knowledge. So, of course, the most uh, secure code for ensuring knowledge development and retention is communication. And then we have to have what I call cognitively, cognitively correct codes of language semantics. I know it's a big mouthful, even for me sometimes, especially in the morning on one coffee. But cognitively correct language codes and semantics that support memory and knowledge, and also multiple sensory development or multi-dimensional sensory development. So we need to use all skills. So to actually also touch upon something else that you were saying before when we were talking about the STEM fields, in our casual conversation, you had also mentioned um, music, and I mentioned movement, and so we both expounded a little bit more upon music and movement and natural math skills, which actually encompass both of those things. And uh, that leads me to ask you another question. But again, when we speak some more during this session, I can add emotional cognition to some of the other points that I would like to make. But we did
Right.
speak also, and this is a question for you, about optimizing success in also in terms of where parents and teachers communicate together, because I know that you have a lot more to say about the STEM fields and what would be the best way for teachers. Because once children go from home, where their parents are their primary educator, then they go into school where the teacher becomes like the primary parent. So there has to be a good communication between teachers and parents. And that was one of my original questions to you. So, how do we ensure children's success in school, academic success, where there has to be a collaboration between educational success and optimizing educational success between for children, and that is coordinated and communicated between the parents and the children? You already spoke about um, securing a structure for them, But to upgrade the values of education, what else do you see in terms of that? Optimizing the success of the children.
Carla, in education system, we do have many stakeholders, from parents to kids to teachers to principals to owners, even the society, leaders. So I think this is an extremely desirous question, and I believe strongly that it's a matter of successful educator. If an educator is successful, he or she will be treating parents in a manner in which schools communicate to the parents in the best way. That's define the quality of the parents you are having or the quality of the parents you are making. That's in the making and of the process. So make parents feel valuable, make parents feel acknowledged and involved about the child's progress. Don't make assumption about the parent, because we all come from a different slot of the society as a whole. So when it comes to communication and collaboration, the involvement of the parents is very important. Yesterday, I was talking to one of my friends, and we will be definitely talking about in our next episode on that. I had a very unique concept about making a parent accountable and adding those scores in the progress report card of a child. If you do not add the score, parent doesn't become accountable. But in while the process of the involvement and the journey of involvement of the parent, if you do that activity, which I'll talk in our next session, the parent will also get recharged, get exposure, and do certain things which they have not learned during their school days. So that's
Right.
something which is very, very important. So I would say that three categories are the best ways where a parent gets influenced and they can participate. Classroom learning activities is something which should be very close to parents and to be informed. Child's sorry, child's accomplishments and accolades to be shared with the parents time to time. Give a help guide to a parent that what are the ways in which a parent can help the student and involve themselves. So good two-way communication between parents and schools helps students to achieve not only academically, but a child feels very strong when it comes to the emotional and the skill development, and feel that yes, the two pillars between the school and the home, or the other at the either end, are supportive in terms of, so that atmosphere supportive atmosphere is required. Now involving parent and communication, I was talking, can be done with various ways of having parent conferences. Parent teacher community already exists in school, but it's not so proactive. Let's make it proactive. Of course, we do a lot of phone calls, mails, but that has to be on a regular basis. Weekly and monthly, folder stand up should be done with the parents. Open house, board of educator, board of educators in a school should meet parents every quarter, which actually happens only at the annual day. So communication, if found done in a proper way, will make an excellent difference, and the gap between the school or the educator and the parents will bridge very soon. I think that will define the quality of very important factor in upgrading the quality of the education.
Okay. I would like to ask you another question, but first I'll ask you if you want to ask me another question first.
Yeah, I have a question for you, Carla, because when I talk about the communication and we talk about parents' involvement, we talk about students' thought process, progress. I think skills and methods have an application. Skills, when we're talking about this cognitive skills, I think skills and methods have an application beyond teacher supervision. Everything is not under teacher supervision. That enhances students through process of
Right.
learning in a higher order thinking skills. So, what is your thought about bringing such interactive way within a classroom? How do you think learners gain information or lose information? Because
Again,
many a times they lose information, they
right,
don't remember. So,
right.
what do you feel about that?
So that's something that's very interconnected to many of the points that you and I already mentioned in terms of communication. So when we look at each aspect that we're speaking about, whether we're talking about the teacher skills, or whether we're talking about what the parents do, or what the teachers and parents do together, and then what teachers do with the children and what parents do with the children, so many times it comes down to communication. So communication and language is something that we rely on so much. We need language for learning. We need language for cognitive development. We need language to interact between ourselves. And also, for a person to develop cognitively, even though we need language skills, we need to use our own language skills to actually speak to ourselves, to ensure what we do. Even when we sit down and study, we need our language skills to do that. It's more than just literacy or numeracy development. Of course, we can see the symbols on a page and understand the literacy, but there are ways to study even that are more in line with what I call intuitive cognitive development, so that you're using multiple sensory tools to learn. But in language, we also use multiple sensory tools already. A lot of times, we already see people are speaking with their hands, and we're using our voice, and we're looking at somebody, or we're hearing them. Or if somebody has impaired vision, they're listening more intently. They're focusing still on the movements of someone as they speak, even though they're unable to see them. So communication is so much more powerful than people really understand. And so there are codes, again, with the way that we use language. And predominantly from very early on, parents and teachers need to use what I call non-negated codes of
Okay,
verbal information processing.
I will come to this point of, this brings some memories of my from the childhood.
Okay.
When we strongly build a cognitive skills, I believe cognitive skills are certain which is acquired, how you treat, how you basically, I would say, nurture a child, what
Mhm.
kind of dialogues you exchange with a child. But some of the cognitive skills are inbuilt, and even you try your best to polish it at certain age, it will dominate and express itself. The genes will dominate. I come from a biotech background, so I can relate
Right.
the science and education very well. So it says that your genetic combination, you have both
Yes.
dominant and recessive genes. So your certain characters and attributes which are a part of your genes can express itself only at a particular time or phase of your life, which I myself has
Yes.
actually addressed. And being one of the example, like my most of the best skills of the life was predominant or dominated or was able to express only when I reached to a 9th standard or 10th standard post that.
Yes.
Before that, it was all hidden. So when you talk about the interaction and the dialogue exchange, what are the critical factors according to your experience where educators have either followed or violated certain principles of gaining attention? Because kids do have this thought of, gaining attention. So what will you keep in mind about getting and keeping students attention, and
Okay.
so
So,
which a child
yeah.
forget?
And what I'd like to say most about that is that, again, with the traditional model of education and parenting, I think across many cultures, there's been a push always for parents to be in the authoritative role. So, of course, parents end up making lots and lots of statements. But the best way, actually, the most simple, applicable uh, thing or intent that people can employ for ensuring that somebody will remember something is to use optimal verbal knowledge. But if we put this in the form of a question, uh, the codes of knowledge and emotional intelligence that we've acquired, especially for adults or people who are in authority, always has given them this idea that they have to stand their ground, never let somebody sort of like that's below them have any kind of influence over them. So But people have never really understood the power of asking questions. People like to make statements and think that that's put them in the position of authority and make other people do what they want to do. But that actually fails to employ children's independent learning, because if we ask them questions, then if the kid has to answer the question, then they have to repeat the information to themselves.
But then Carla, this is very interesting point you've raised, asking a question, because I, as a child, not child, even today, I have an inquiry based of learning, or I'm still a learner. I have an inquiry based of understanding. So a child, where we talk about those 5 C's, which starts from curiosity,
Yeah.
how will you satisfy or trigger a child's curiosity unless and until you do not give a child a platform of asking a question?
Yes.
Because maybe he's asking from a point or from a seat of thought which doesn't exist in a parent's or educator's mind.
Yes. So yeah,
So
I
he
love
is
this.
indeed.
I love this point. I like to say something about that, because I remember when I was working with other teachers, especially in early education, and when I was doing some training, they say, "Oh, sometimes kids ask too many questions." I'm like, "Okay, then answer their question with a question. Answer them with two questions if possible." And then sometimes children already know the answers, but because we fail to really push their unique abilities, sometimes they have to inquire a little bit more. And the question asking from a younger child to an older child who's getting nearer to kindergarten, the quality of the questions change. And that's something that I know that we will speak about some more in the near future, or in other times that we could talk casually
Yeah,
together.
yeah, yeah.
And we'd
Definitely.
love
I think
to.
this is something which is a matter of diversified education, of
Right.
cohesive
So
development.
the point is right. And this is where we include diversification. So children ask questions. So we like to ask questions back to them. Or at least we should like to ask questions, because if
Yes,
we're
sure.
also trying to ensure our own lifetime learning, we need to be in the habit of asking questions, ask questions to ourselves. There's things that we can learn from children too, because children are great explorers. So we have to use that piece of that trait, that feature of theirs in our favor, and also against them in a really optimal, positive way. Feed the question back to them. And when teachers are sometimes, being bombarded with all kinds of things, which teachers are just as parents are, it's always a good idea to just ask the child the question. It gives you a chance to think, but
So
it
Carla,
also allows the child to do independent critical thinking in the
here
most
I
basic
have
way.
something. Here we say, we talk in the leadership coaching also. We should do what we love to do, and we should love
Right.
what we do. So
Yes.
why not making your profession, your work with the students and the parents, a playway of learning, kind of happy environment that the learning is going on. Keep all your lesson plans, timelines, of course that is there. But when you're in the 40 minutes of classroom, engagement should be a 20-25 minutes in a happy
Yes.
way,
Yeah.
because I believe this emotional skills building will bring the academic faster, and retention will be faster in a child, rather
Yes.
than making it a very hard and fast and tough thumb rule for the children to
Yeah.
absorb the learning. So that's a
Yeah.
very interesting point actually you brought about in the diversified education and cognitive development.
Right. Yes. It's not anything that school could be military.
So I think Carla, you are there, or I think there's some
They
connection.
are right. Uh,
Yes,
this
you are there.
I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah,
I'm
I
here.
think yes, yes. Okay.
Yes.
So there was some
So
disturbance in
I'll
your
just
connectivity.
backtrack a little. I'll just backtrack a little bit. So I think that curiosity and imagination and exploration and discovery are should be integrated into our communication skills. The same way that we talked about the STEM fields art and movement, which I know that you have a lot more to say about, and you could definitely say something about that upon our closing. I'd love to hear you expound upon that whole aspect of the sciences and the maths included with the arts and the music. And both of us have also spoken casually, and I'm sure we will speak some more about it casually because we love the topic of diversification and the variety that is found in all different children's experiences and their unique abilities. And we've also talked about, which is part of my answer to your original question to me, because diversification includes so many more aspects than what people have understood. And today, diversification has been hijacked to apply to just some kind of, cultural application that we use for inclusion. But diversification is so much more diversified than people understand. And it's actually a cognitive development process that includes all of our sensory tools. So when we speak about even doing something like engineering um, or medical treatment, we should each of those fields should be diversified with so many other aspects. And the arts and culture and humanities, music, movement, all of these things, they have to actually be included diversely in all the fields of knowledge that we learn. So when you think about some of the new healing technologies, they involve vibrations. Well, then you need to know something about music and rhythm and all the fundamental principles of math and movement. So they really need to be diversified. When we have sort of arts and culture and music and movement, and just a margin note at the side of cognitive development and the STEM fields. And when we talk about diversification, we're opening up a whole new definition, which is actually the original definition of what diversification was. So I'd
So
like you to say
Carla,
something
picking up your
about
point, so I want to little expand on this multidimensional
yes,
approach because kids are multidimensional. As you
yes,
grow and you come to an age of needed, you're dumped into something and you walk into a one narrow kind of cognitive development. In fact, the kids are more highly cognitively developed or have the skills as compared to the adults. So we are
yes,
basically putting the child into the inert education or the inert knowledge kind of structure form because we, as you rightly said, STEM, STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And arts is not only about arts; it's about the feeling, it's about the
yes,
imagination, it's about thinking, breaking the box. I would not say out of the box, but breaking the box and uh, yeah, empty canvas, and you write your own everything and you design something.
mhm,
So you are back basically innovating yourself, you're remodeling yourself. In the process, you are actually going towards a productive behavior. That is actually the real cognitive development. And
yes,
indirectly, you are shaping your brain for because of these consistent and supportive environment. You are shaping the brain, and which we actually call as a cognitive development. So learning of social, emotional, and academic skills all together will actually build up the cognitive development. But as you rightly said, the early years of 6 to 8 years are very critical time where you can develop the emotional and social skills more than the academics, because academics can be picked up on a later stage. So
yes,
fostering the supportive environment and implementing a real meaning of the education system is something which is important, I believe that. So Carla, I would request you to share something about the kind of avenues which are available right now across the world, and better ways or some tips for the educators of developing the cognitive skills at the school level in a holistic approach. Certain thoughts about from your end before we close
okay.
up
So
the.
I think that the two main things that we need to really explore and very much expound upon in terms of what are the avenues on the international level where education is concerned, because we also, to start with, we know that there's these international exams that high school students are taking that are showing, in particular, they're highlighting their skills in the maths and sciences and language. But we also know that each of those areas are particularly pointing out or drawing out in the students what their critical thinking skills are. So two avenues that are particularly significant in education and educational development and educational reform have to do with critical thinking, which is directly tied, of course, to innovation, which is directly tied to computational thinking and creative thinking development. And also, educational thinking itself is thought of on a global scale. And we have the internet and the World Wide Web, of course. So children are developing more than peer groups in their school. They're developing peer groups with children who live around the world. So their whole perspective on the world is different than any other child or generation in all of human history. So we need to take that into heavy consideration, because again, when we boil it down to its lowest common denominator, again, we're speaking about communication, and communication is directly relative to cognitive development skills. So when we speak about also the first 5 years of emotional, intuitive cognitive development. And I say emotional, intuitive cognitive development for two reasons. One, because we learn language intuitively in the first 5 years, and we use language for everything in life. And also because emotional cognitive development is more influences the plasticity of our learning on an epigenetic level. And then in that stage that you spoke about, in the 6 to 8 year old stage, it becomes more, the plasticity becomes more a connectivity, a process in the foundations of intellectual development in our brains, on a more physiological and mindful, if you want to say, process.
Absolutely. So I think
And so
the new generation has, yes.
yes, the new
Yes,
generation is thinking globally, unlike any generation in history. So I think this is the main avenue to really contemplate in
so basically,
educational
I would say that
development.
new generation is very sensitive, but they are sensible according to me. The kind of interaction I've been doing with all grades across from
Yes,
pre-primary to the university level, and I think they're quick to learn. They're sensible. They are sensitive. It's all about the kind of platforms we are giving them the exposure. It's all about the kind of hand holding we are doing with them. Let's be more emotional. Let's be more working towards a social understanding. Make them ready. Listen to them. I think they will do wonders in their life, because it is that's the need of the hour, and then life becomes worthy of what we are actually talking about. Why we are doing so much of discussion in education segment is all because we want to make our children the best as a human being, a happy life, a satisfied life. So,
yes,
all those who have been watching this session, we are coming out with lined up sessions on cognitive skills, not only for the educators, but for the parents, for the business leaders, for, of course, for the university colleges and all these stakeholders. So, stay tuned with us. Me and Carla are coming with a series on cognitive skills at various levels. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching. Have a good day, Carla. Thank you so much.
thank you. You too, Rajni.